The fires had died down, but smoke still rose into the dark sky. The village was gone. Burned to the ground, houses were now black shapes, empty and broken. And in the middle of it all, under a blanket of ash, lay a little alien girl. She was curled up beside her mother's body, cold and stiff. Her small arms were wrapped around her mother's waist. She didn't cry anymore. Her tears had dried 2 days ago. She was too tired, too hungry, and too scared to move. She was alone, completely alone. No one had come to check the ruins. No one had come to rescue her. Birds had already circled above, and insects crawled below, but she stayed still, pretending to be dead. Maybe if she stopped breathing, the pain would stop too. But her heart still beat, weak but stubborn. She didn't even know her own name anymore. Only the smell of smoke and blood kept her company. Then something changed. She heard a sound-heavy footsteps on dirt and rubble, not the sharp click of alien boots, but something slower, heavier. Someone was coming. She held her breath, eyes wide open, her little body trembling. She hoped it was her father. Or maybe a neighbor, but no, it was not one of her kind. A tall shape walked through the smoke, wearing brown armor and a torn scarf. A human. He stopped when he saw her. His eyes looked at the dead body, then at the little girl clinging to it. He didn't move closer, just stared. The girl didn't speak, didn't even blink. She thought he will leave like the others. But the man didn't leave. Instead, he dropped to one knee, slowly. He took off his coat and reached toward her. She flinched, expecting a weapon. A strike, anything. But the coat was warm, soft, and he wrapped it gently around her. He didn't say a word. The girl looked up at him. Confused, no one had touched her with kindness since the attack. He didn't ask her name, didn't ask what happened. He just picked her up carefully, as if she were made of glass. Her body was light, almost too light. She had eaten nothing in days as he carried her away. She looked back one last time at her mother. Her mother's eyes were still open, staring at the sky. The girl didn't cry. Not yet. The human man Jonas walked. For hours, he didn't talk, didn't explain who he was. But he gave her water from a bottle, and she drank it with shaking hands. When she coughed, he stopped and waited. When she started to sleep in his arms, he shifted her gently. They reached a small hidden shelter near the forest. Not much, just metal walls and a fire pit, but to her, it felt like another world. Warm, quiet, away from death. Jonas sat her down on a soft mat. He handed her soup in a metal cup. She stared at it for a while, then slowly drank. It burned her tongue. It was too hot, but she didn't care. Food was food. He sat across from her, watching, not speaking, not judging. He didn't smile, but his eyes were kind. He was not young, not old. His face had scars. He looked like someone who had seen many wars. Still, the girl didn't trust him fully. She kept glancing at the door, her small hands gripping the coat he gave her. She thought, why did he help me? She had heard stories about humans, some good, many bad, but he didn't hurt her. He didn't sell her. He didn't ask for anything. Night came, and she sat by the fire. Jonas gave her a blanket, tucked it around her. She whispered for the first time, her voice barely a breath. Thank you. Jonas looked up, surprised. He didn't say anything back, just nodded once. Then he turned away, checking the locks, the fire, the shadows outside. She watched him, eyes half closed, and, for the first time since the fire, since the bombs, since the screaming, she slept, not because she was safe, but because someone had finally seen her and did not walk away. The girl woke to the sound of soft rain tapping against the metal roof. She was no longer lying in ash, no longer beside her dead mother. Instead, she was wrapped in a blanket, warm and clean. A soft mat was beneath her, and the fire still glowed in the corner. She blinked slowly, unsure if this was a dream. In the corner of the room, the human man was sitting at a small table. He had removed his armor, now dressed in a worn shirt and gloves. His eyes were focused on a small device in his hand, blinking lights and wires. But when she sat up, his head turned immediately. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just gave a small nod. The girl clutched the blanket tighter. Her eyes studied the room. It was small, but full of strange things. Stacks of metal cans, old maps, a radio that buzzed with static. A photo was stuck to the wall, two humans smiling. One looked like Jonas, but younger. With someone beside him, maybe family, maybe lost. The man stood and brought her a bowl of warm food. She took it with both hands, her fingers still trembling. He waited, watching her eat, as if checking if she would keep it down. She did, slowly, spoon by spoon. It was salty, but she didn't care. It was the first real meal she had tasted since the war came. "Safe here," Jonas said quietly, pointing to the walls. His voice was rough, like sand. She didn't understand the full meaning, but she felt it. This place, this hidden shelter, was away from the chaos. No soldiers, no fire, no screaming. He knelt beside her and held up a hand. He pointed to himself, Jonas, then pointed to her, a question in his eyes. The girl looked down, lips tight. She didn't want to say her name. Not yet. So he didn't push her. Instead, he picked up an old datapad and opened a simple game. Colored blocks moved around the screen. He slid it across the floor to her. She stared at it, confused, but as her fingers touched the screen, something in her changed. She played silently, her small hands slowly moving the blocks. Jonas watched her without speaking. She didn't know why, but it felt nice. Outside, the rain turned to wind. The forest around the shelter hissed like it was whispering secrets. But inside, the fire crackled softly, and the girl played for the first time in months. Later that night, she watched Jonas fix a broken drone. His hands were fast, precise, like someone used to building under pressure. Wires sparked, tools clicked. But he didn't speak to her unless she looked confused when she asked with her eyes. He explained with his hands. She learned fast, not with words, but by watching. Jonas noticed. And for the first time, he smiled, just a little. But it made the girl feel something strange, something warm. No one had smiled at her in a long time. Not even her mother, not near the end. That night, she couldn't sleep. Memories returned. Flames, the screams, her mother's final breath. She sat by the window, looking at the trees dancing in the wind. Jonas joined her after a while, silent again. He handed her a small piece of cloth stitched with stars, a child's toy, faded and old. She held it tight, not understanding why tears came again. But this time, she let them fall. Family. She whispered, her voice hoarse. Jonas didn't answer right away. He looked at the toy. Then at the dark forest outside, he finally said, "Lost," just one word, but it said everything. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just breathing. When she leaned her head against his arm, he didn't move away. She didn't know why, but she felt less broken, like some of the pieces inside her were beginning to fit again. In the morning, Jonas gave her paper and a pencil. She drew her old village before the attack. He watched in silence, then pointed to one of the buildings, school. He asked, she nodded, surprised, then pointed to the mountain behind it. "Safe," she whispered. Jonas understood. Maybe someone else had escaped to that mountain. Maybe others were still alive. But if that place was safe, it might not stay safe for long. He stood, his face serious again. He grabbed his bag, checked his rifle, and handed her a small knife. She looked up, confused. "Learn," he said. She nodded slowly, clutching the handle like a lifeline. Something was changing now, not just in her, but in Jonas too. She didn't know if he was a soldier, a refugee, or something else. But she knew one thing clearly. He didn't treat her like a burden. He treated her like a person, and that, to her, was a kind of magic. The girl was learning fast every day. She helped Jonas with small things, washing tools, sharpening knives, lighting the fire. He didn't treat her like a child. He gave her real tasks, small but important, and she did them without complaint. She still didn't speak much, but her eyes said a lot. She asked silent questions, and Jonas always answered with short words and calm hands. Sometimes they laughed, soft, careful laughs, like they didn't want the world to hear. It was quiet inside the shelter, peaceful. But peace never lasts long in a broken world. One morning, the radio buzzed. Jonas stood still, listening, eyes narrowed. The voice on the other end was faint, but the words were clear. Sector 9. Confirmed sighting. Small survivor, possibly hiding. Reward offered, return alive, or terminated. The girl was slicing roots when Jonas turned off the radio. She looked up at his face, sensing something had changed. He didn't say anything, but she could feel it in the air, the cold return of danger. That night, Jonas hid his weapons under the floor panels. He packed a small bag with food and gave the girl a signal. One finger to his lips, quiet, one hand on her shoulder, stay close. The next morning, they heard it. Engines. Distant but growing louder. A ship, low and fast, flew over the treetops. The girl ducked, fear gripping her chest. Jonas stood by the door, silent and still, watching the sky. Then came the knock. Loud, heavy, not friendly. Jonas opened the door with slow hands. 3 armored soldiers stood outside, gray armor, green visors, faces hidden. We're looking for a survivor, the leader said, voice sharp like metal. Small, alien female, last seen near this region. Jonas blinked, no fear in his eyes. I live alone, he said, calm and cool. The soldier stepped closer. You sure? We have scans. The girl crouched under the floor panel Jonas had shown her. She held her breath, heart pounding like drums. Every sound above felt louder, boots on metal, guns clicking. She closed her eyes, wishing she could vanish. Jonas led the soldiers inside, slow and steady. They looked around. Scanners blinking red and green. One soldier kicked a chair. Another opened a crate. The leader stared at Jonas. You don't like aliens, do you? He asked, voice testing. Jonas shrugged. They don't bother me. The scanner beeped near the floor. One of the soldiers bent down, tapping the wood. Jonas moved fast, too fast to think. He dropped a canister at their feet. Smoke bursting. Out, in the chaos, he pulled the girl from the hiding spot and ran. They escaped through the back tunnel. It was narrow and dark. But Jonas had planned this for weeks. The girl didn't speak, didn't cry, just followed his steps. They ran through the forest, through mud and trees. Behind them, gunshots cracked the air. But no one chased, not yet, after hours of walking. They stopped by an old cave. Jonas lit a fire with shaking hands. The girl stared at him, eyes wide with fear and trust. Why lie? She asked softly, her voice barely there. Jonas looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, because they would take you. Because you're not just a survivor, you're a target. She didn't understand everything, but she nodded. He was protecting her, that much was clear. She sat beside the fire, quiet, and for the first time, she spoke again 3 simple words. I'm not scared. Jonas chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow. Good, he said, because we're not done yet. That night, as they rested in the cave, the girl asked him something strange. What's it like to not run? Jonas stared into the fire. It's been a long time, he said. Maybe one day you'll teach me how. Above them, in the dark sky, the patrol ships circled again. They didn't find the shelter, not right away, but they would return, stronger, angrier, and deep inside the cave. The girl began drawing symbols into the dirt, strange shapes glowing faintly. Jonas watched, confused. "How do you know that?" he asked. She looked up, her eyes shining dim blue in the firelight. "I don't know," she whispered. "It's just inside me." Jonas sat back, heart pounding. The soldiers were coming, but maybe. So was something else, something bigger. Something buried deep in this girl, and for the first time since this began, Jonas felt not just fear, he felt a spark of hope. The cave was quiet, but inside the girl's mind, a storm had begun. She sat near the fire, knees pulled close to her chest, her fingers still glowed faint blue. The strange symbol she had drawn now fading. Jonas kept looking at the marks in the dirt. They were not human, not alien, not from any language he knew. "Where did you learn that?" he asked again, softer this time. The girl looked at the fire, not answering. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know. Jonas didn't push her. He just sat beside her, polishing his weapon in silence, but his eyes were full of questions. That night, the wind outside howled through the cave entrance. The girl didn't sleep. Instead, she kept seeing flashes, images in her head. Not memories of the attack, but things older, deeper. She saw a tower of glass on a mountain. She saw beings with long hands touching her forehead, and she heard a voice, not hers, whispering a name over and over. But when she awoke with a gasp, that name slipped away. Jonas was already up. He handed her water and nodded. "Nightmares?" he asked. The girl nodded back, but didn't tell him the truth. They weren't nightmares. They were messages. Over the next few days, they moved from cave to cave, always traveling at night, hiding during the day. Jonas knew the patrols were getting closer, but something had changed. The girl wasn't just running anymore, she was remembering. She began drawing again, not for fun, but for purpose. Lines, shapes, patterns. Jonas tried to record them, copying everything she scratched into rocks and dirt. One night, she drew something that made Jonas freeze. It was a symbol, an ancient crest from a long-lost race, one known only to a few war historians. Jonas pulled out his datapad and checked old records. His hands shook as he read. That crest hadn't been seen in over 100 years. It belonged to a species wiped out in the Great Purge, but somehow, this little girl was drawing it from memory. He sat beside her and asked carefully, "Do you hear voices?" The girl looked up, surprised. "Only in dreams," she said. Jonas leaned closer. "What did they say?" she whispered. "They say, remember who you are." Jonas leaned back, stunned. This was bigger than he thought. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a key to something ancient, maybe something powerful. That night, while she slept beside the fire, Jonas contacted someone, an old friend, a historian. Someone who had once believed in lost knowledge. A key sent a message, encrypted and hidden. Found something important, might be connected to the Ark code. Key didn't explain more. If anyone else intercepted it, it would be the end. Meanwhile, the girl kept dreaming. She began to speak in her sleep, not in her voice, but in a strange one, calm. Older, Jonas sometimes woke to her whispering things like, "The gate must be opened," or "The bloodline lives." It chilled him to the bone, but still, he stayed close. On the 6th night, the girl woke suddenly. She ran outside the cave and stopped under the stars. Jonas followed. Alarmed, she pointed at the sky, her eyes glowing again. "There," she said. "That's where I'm from." Jonas looked up. Was a dead zone, an old sector destroyed. In the last galactic war, nothing was supposed to be left. "You remember that place?" he asked. She nodded. "It remembers me," she said. And with that, she collapsed. Jonas caught her before she hit the ground. She was burning up, her skin hot to the touch. But inside her chest, something pulsed, something bright and alive. Not human, not alien, but something in between. He stayed up all night, watching her, guarding her, and as she slept, she muttered one word over and over again, a name Jonas had never heard. But it carved itself into his mind like fire. Sarah Luna. The next morning, Jonas made a choice. They wouldn't hide anymore. If she was remembering, if she was part of something forgotten by time, then they had to find out the truth. "Get up," he said gently. She opened her eyes, still weak. "We're going to find out who you really are," Jonas said, "and why they want you so badly." She nodded slowly, not afraid this time. Somewhere deep inside, she already knew the memories were no longer just dreams. They were calls, and she was finally ready to answer them. Jonas had seen many things in his life: war, famine, betrayal, even miracles. But nothing had prepared him for her. The small girl who once lay beside her mother's dead body was changing. Not just healing, not just surviving. Something inside her was waking up. They were moving again, now toward the edge of Sector 9. Jonas had received a coded message from the historian. It said one thing only: she matches the lost line. Keep her hidden. No coordinates, no explanation. But Jonas didn't need more. The girl was rare, maybe one of a kind, and dangerous people would kill to control her. As they walked through rocky terrain, the girl touched her chest and whispered, "It's loud again." Jonas glanced at her. "What do you mean?" She pressed her hand over her heart. "It's not just dreams anymore. It's like someone's knocking inside me." They stopped by a small river. Jonas gave her water and sat down beside her. "You're not like the others," he said. The girl stayed quiet. "You know that, right?" he added. She nodded slowly. "I feel different." She looked at her reflection in the water. Her eyes were changing brighter, deeper, almost glowing. Her skin shimmered faintly in the sun, like threads of silver were woven into it. She had always been small, fragile-looking, but now even her steps were stronger. Jonas remembered something from the old wars. There were stories about children born from forbidden unions, blends of ancient blood and lost codes. Created in hidden labs, never meant to live. Most were destroyed before birth. But one rumor spoke of a single child who escaped. That child, they said, carried a genetic song. Something buried so deep it couldn't be heard until the world was broken. Jonas looked at the girl beside him and wondered, was that song playing now? That night, they found a ruined research post. It had been abandoned for decades. Half buried in vines and dust, Jonas powered up the generator and checked the logs. The screen flickered old files. Broken code, fragments of names. The girl wandered into a side room. Inside, she found a cracked glass tube, big enough for a child, and on the wall, letters carved deep into metal. Project Sarah Luna. Her breath caught. She touched the letters with trembling fingers. And suddenly, a flash of memory hit her like lightning. She was floating, not breathing, cold lights above her. Voices chanting numbers, someone saying, "This one will be different," and pain. So much pain. She stumbled back, shaking. Jonas ran to her side, holding her steady. "What did you see?" he asked. She looked into his eyes, her own glowing now like stars. "I was made, Jonas," she said, voice distant. "I wasn't born. I was built." Jonas swallowed hard. He had feared this. Not because it changed how he saw her, but because it explained why the soldiers wanted her. If she was the last of a forbidden project, she wasn't just special. She was illegal. He scanned the walls, pulling more files. Her DNA matched a code stamped inside this very facility. It was true, she was part of Sarah Luna, a living relic of forgotten science. But there was something else. A hidden file unlocked by her presence. A video blurry, damaged, but real. It showed a woman with glowing eyes, holding a baby. "She will unite what we broke," the woman. Said, "She's the bridge, not the weapon." The video cut out. Jonas looked at the girl again, her face pale, her eyes wide. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered. Jonas placed a hand on her shoulder. "We find answers," he said. "And we keep moving." But deep down, he knew they were running out of time. Her awakening couldn't be hidden forever. The more she remembered, the more. The world would feel it. Outside, clouds gathered. A storm was coming of war, of truth, and at its center was this girl, who was once just a silent survivor. But now she was something far greater, something that would either fix what was broken or burn everything down. The sky above the forest turned dark before the sun had fully set. Storm clouds rolled in, heavy and fast, like the world itself knew what was coming. Jonas stood at the edge of the ruined outpost, eyes on the sky. The girl stood behind him, silent, her hands glowing softly again. She didn't speak, but she could feel it. They were not alone anymore. Jonas pulled out his scanner, and the screen lit up red. Multiple heat signatures, fast-moving, approaching from the east. Drones. He said under his breath. He turned to her, his voice low. "They found us." She didn't ask how. She already knew. Each time she remembered more. Each time her blood pulsed with strange light. Something somewhere picked up the signal, like a beacon screaming into space. They didn't have time to gather supplies. Jonas grabbed only the basics: his rifle, one medkit, water, and the girl's drawings. He shoved them into his pack and turned to her. "Run," he said. "Now." They left through a broken tunnel under the old lab. The path was narrow, filled with roots and mud. Jonas led the way, checking behind them every few seconds. She followed close, her small feet fast and silent. Above them, the hum of engines grew louder. Bright lights flashed through the trees, sweeping the ground like fingers searching in the dark. Then came the voice, cold and robotic. From the loudspeakers, "Surrender the girl, and you will not be harmed." Jonas cursed under his breath. "They know exactly who you are now," he said. The girl looked up, her eyes full of sadness, but no fear. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. Jonas gave her a tight nod. "Then we don't stop running." They reached a ridge overlooking a deep valley. Jonas knew what was ahead: an old smuggler's tunnel beneath the cliffs, if they could reach it. They might get off-world, but the drones were closing in. He handed her a small pulse grenade. "Push this button if they get too close," he said. She looked at it like it was poison. "I don't know how to fight," she said. Jonas knelt beside her. "Just survive," he said. "That's enough." As they reached the cliffside, the first drone spotted them. It fired a warning shot, scorching the rock beside her head. She stumbled, nearly falling, but Jonas caught her arm. "Go!" he shouted, pushing her forward. They slid down the slope, rocks cutting their legs and hands, but there was no time to stop. The tunnel was inside a rusted door half covered in moss. Jonas blasted it open with a charge, and they ran inside. The tunnel smelled of oil, dust, and old metal, but it was safe for now. Jonas sealed the door behind them, but he knew it would only buy them minutes. Maybe less. They ran through the narrow hallways. The girl's glow began to brighten again. Her breath was fast, panicked. "It's happening again," she said. Pressing her hand to her chest, Jonas slowed down and turned to her focus. "Don't fight it this time," he said. "Let it happen." She closed her eyes, and suddenly the walls of the tunnel flickered. Old lights powered on lights that hadn't worked in decades. Panels lit up, screens came alive, and somewhere deeper in the tunnel, a voice whispered, "Welcome back, Sarah Luna." Jonas stared, stunned. The tunnel was responding to her. It wasn't just a smuggler's path. It was part of her design, her history, her hidden past. She activated something, Jonas muttered. And then he heard it: metal doors sliding open in the distance, an underground escape pod bay. Still working, she turned to him, breathless. "Jonas, we can leave." He nodded, but just as they stepped toward the bay, the walls behind them exploded. A team of black-armored soldiers stormed in. "Target confirmed, terminate handler." "Recover the asset." Jonas raised his weapon. The girl stepped in front of him. "Don't," she said. Her voice was calm, strong. Her hands rose slowly, and the air around her pulsed. A wave of invisible energy burst outward like a heartbeat turned into thunder. The soldiers froze mid-step, their weapons shutting down, their visors cracked. Lights in their armor blinking out. Jonas stared in disbelief. She had just disabled an entire strike team without touching them. She turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to hurt them." Jonas placed his hand on her shoulder. "You didn't. You stopped them. Together." They entered the escape pod. The doors sealed shut, and the engines began to hum. The girl held the drawings close to her chest. Jonas keyed in random coordinates anywhere far from this place. "Are you ready?" he asked. She looked at the stars rising in the view screen. "I think I was made to run," she said quietly, "but maybe now. I'm ready to find out why." The pod launched, vanishing into the sky. Behind them, the tunnel collapsed, and the girl who once lay beside her dead mother now soared into space, awake, alive, and no longer afraid. The stars stretched endlessly outside the pod's window, each one a tiny light in the dark, cold sky. The girl leaned against the glass, eyes wide, heart calm for the first time in weeks. She wasn't sure where they were going, but for the first time she wanted to go. Jonas sat across from her, checking the pod systems. "Engine stable, food supply low, oxygen clean," he muttered. He looked at the girl, her glowing eyes reflecting the galaxy. She looked less like a child now, more like something new. A beginning. She held her drawings in her lap. The old ones Jonas had saved, and the new ones symbols she didn't remember drawing. They looked like maps, star paths, keys. Jonas believed they were messages. "We'll find a place," he said quietly. "A quiet world, off the charts." She nodded. "One with trees." He smiled. "And no soldiers." They traveled for 3 days. No radio signals, no warships, just space and silence. On the 4th day, the girl pointed at a soft green light on the screen. "There," she said. Jonas checked the coordinates. An unregistered planet, rich with forests and water. No life signs, no settlements, just peace. "Why that one?" Jonas asked. She didn't explain. She only whispered, "It feels like home." As the pod descended, clouds parted like a curtain below them. A vast jungle stretched out in every direction, rivers like silver threads, mountains wrapped in mist. It was untouched, pure. A place no one had claimed. They landed in a small meadow, soft moss under their feet. The air was warm, sweet with strange flowers. Bird-like creatures flew overhead, singing. The girl smiled and spun once, her arms out wide. Jonas couldn't help but laugh. They built a camp near a waterfall. Jonas used old survival gear while the girl gathered fruits and soft leaves. They didn't talk much that first day. They didn't need to. At night, she sat by the fire and told stories, not memories, but dreams. "Sometimes I see a temple," she said, "floating above the clouds. Sometimes I see others like me, but their eyes are closed, like they're sleeping." Jonas listened, nodding. He didn't understand everything, but he believed her. On the 3rd night, something strange happened. The girl walked to the center of the meadow and placed her hand on the ground. The earth pulsed beneath her palm, and a faint glow rose from the soil patterns, circles, marks, like the ones she used to draw. Jonas stared, speechless. "You activated something," he said. The girl looked at him, calm and sure. "I think this place remembers me." She stood there for a long time, eyes closed, and when she returned, she held a small crystal in her hand. "It was under the ground," she said. Jonas took it carefully. Inside, he saw swirling lights, moving like a galaxy in a bottle. "This is part of you," he said. "No." She replied softly, "It's part of us." They stayed on the planet, built a small shelter near the waterfall, planted seeds. She learned to cook. Jonas taught her to write. In human script, she gave herself a name, Mara. It meant peace in an old alien tongue. One evening, years later, a ship appeared in the sky. Jonas reached for his weapon, but Mira only watched. The ship didn't attack. It hovered, then landed. From it stepped an old woman, gray-skinned with silver eyes. She bowed low before Mira, tears running down her face. "You are the last of the line," the woman said. "I was told to find you when the stars burned again." Mira said nothing at first. Then she stepped forward and touched the woman's hand. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Tell me who I really am." They sat by the fire, and the woman told stories of the past, of lost cities, ancient codes, and a chosen bloodline, a project to heal the damage caused by war. Mira was not a weapon. She was a reset, built not to destroy, but to restore. Jonas sat quietly, listening, proud and sad. He knew this was just the beginning for her. But he also knew he had done what he was meant to do. He had protected her, until she could stand on her own the next morning. Mira stood at the edge of the forest. The old woman waited by the ship. Jonas walked up beside her. "You don't have to go," he said. She smiled gently. "I do," she whispered, "but I'll return." He placed the crystal in her hand. "Then take this," he said, "so you don't forget where your new home is." She hugged him tightly, and then she left. The ship vanished into the sky, and Jonas stood alone in the meadow, watching the stars. He wasn't afraid, because he knew what she had become. Not a lost girl, not a child born in war, but a beacon and somewhere among the stars. She carried his kindness with her. As the fire burned gently behind him, Jonas whispered her name into the wind. Mira, and the world, once silent, whispered it back.